Good morning. Thank you for joining Coffee with an Architect. Appreciate everybody being here. My name is Kaylee Hashaw. I'm with TJK Consulting Engineers, and I am the current Ally Director for the local AIA chapter. Mike Larson is our guest architect this morning. So I will begin by reading Mike's bio. So Mike Larson serves as an architect, project director, and studio leader with JCJ Architecture in the Las Vegas office. He's an entrepreneurial-minded architect with over 19 years of experience working with some of the most prominent names in hospitality and gaming. Mike is passionate about gaming and creating spaces that enhance personal experiences. He takes hospitality to heart and utilizes design strategies to positively influence the experience and mood of the guests. With a dialogue-driven style, Mike makes it his mission to keep his clients and team members informed and communicating. By cultivating relationships and fostering collaboration, he works with each unique team to develop best results through space planning and design. Mike has worked with a variety of projects with clients such as Caesars, Circa, Hakkasan, Mandalay Bay, MGM, Resorts World, Tao, and SLS. So please help me welcome Mike Larson this morning. Hello, how are you?
Good morning. I'm doing great. How are you?
Good, good. Happy Wednesday to you and everybody.
Yeah.
I thought it was Tuesday. Kelly informed me it was Wednesday. So just to start off reading your bio, I thought it was such a great way to describe what you do. You enjoy designing spaces that enhance experiences, and very cool to say like the mood for the guests. So I'm curious on what does that process look like for you to sort of ensure that those things are achieved?
Well, I mean, that's a very eloquent way to put it, but the more succinct way is, I love creating spaces where people are having fun. That's what got me into hospitality in the first place was, going through architecture school and kind of doing the normal path of what you're building. And what I really was drawn to was the ability to create spaces where people were having a good time. And, what that looks like is I love understanding the entire experience that we're creating for a guest. And it kind of translates into the clients that we work with, and the relationships we develop with our various clients and the properties that they have, because they're creating experiences for their guests that go beyond, whether we're doing a restaurant or a conference center or what have you. They want to capture that guest's entire day from the time they wake up to the time they go to bed, and even while they're sleeping. It's an entire spectrum of time, and understanding what that is throughout the course of their day influences the little stuff that we do in the little parts that we design along the way. And I think it's a lot of fun because you get to learn a lot about how they think, how the client thinks, how the guest thinks, and ultimately it's fun to be a guest too, and really take in what I'm experiencing when I go to these properties, what I want to do next, what the best and maybe the lesser fun components that you experience, and then how to take those into your design. So it goes into that dialogue part too, is all those things that we experience and think about. And as we analyze that guest throughout their stay, kind of goes to the back and forth with the client of what is ultimately their goals and where the areas that we can improve on in the space that we're creating, as well as throughout the entire property.
Yeah, and hospitality is the ultimate fun, right? Experience. So I'm sure
I've yet to find anything better than Las Vegas hospitality. So, and yeah. It's one of those things that gets, what we do here in Las Vegas seems to, get exported to a lot of places around the country and around the world. And it's pretty cool to be part of the epicenter of that.
Yeah. Do you have a project that stands out to you where you thought that experience or that mood that you were going for, or the client really wanted was captured, and it stands out in your mind?
The one in particular that was pretty great, if you've ever been to, it's actually not open anymore, but what was the upper level, the second floor club space at Labo at the Palazzo, because it was a nightclub, but it was also this place that it was about, C and D scene and a lot of, very specific moments that the client wanted to create from the time the guest arrived to their entire stay. And it was a very odd space because it was essentially a discarded second floor space that we didn't have a way to get to. And as we went through the space, their restaurant program didn't fit in the restaurant space. So we had to hang a kitchen from the ceiling, and we had to hang a bridge to get people up to the second level. And it's all these, gymnastics to make it work. But in reality, the bridge ended up being a catwalk where it was the nightclub goers on display to the restaurant goers. And once you got up there, it was, very intimate, and had a lot of small spaces, but a lot of ways that people could see each other and see other people. And it turned out to be a very successful space and a very beautiful space. So it's something that I've been pretty proud of.
Yeah, that's fun to know. I think I spent a New Year's Ve in that nightclub once upon a time. So that's kind of that's fun to hear.
It's not surprising that you might not remember. If anybody's been to that space, there's a lot of water features in that space. And as you can imagine, there's a lot of plumbing issues that come with that much drinking, with people throwing up, and all that had to be accounted for. And it was pretty wild, but it was a great space, fun design.
Yeah. The architecture of like the hospitality sector, was that something that sort of, made you want to be an architect, or was there something else that sort of led you down that path?
I decided I wanted to be an architect in 8th grade. And the first time I decided that, I was actually, my shop teacher in 8th grade was teaching us mechanical drafting, and he's like, here's some drawing tools, draw something that you see every day. And I drew a gas station, and I was like, oh, this is great. This is so cool. I'm going to be an architect. And it wasn't until I was in college that I was sort of looking at what I was doing and a little bored with it. But I got to credit, John Cly, who many of you know, was a great mentor of mine. And he and Dan Juba sponsored the architecture library at North Dakota State, where I went. And it was through that exposure to them that I got to know what they did. And, looking at those projects and what happens in Las Vegas, it was kind of an eye opener for me and lit a fire in me as to the excitement that could come with what we do. So that's what drew me to hospitality.
That's great. And what is today, having 19 years of experience, what does architecture mean to you today?
It's still very much about the buildings, but it's a lot about the process and the relationships. I mean, ultimately we're working with people. We're creating buildings, but we're working with people, and whatever stage of the process that you're in, you're dealing with individuals that are really good at what they do, and everybody does something different. So as much as the buildings are incredible to create and beautiful in their own right, it's pretty great to work with the individuals and kind of see what everybody is contributing. So architecture has become more of a process to me than just the product and just the buildings. But ultimately those buildings become the fabric of what we experience through our lives, whether you're on the strip or whether you're in the city, and it all kind of adds to that. So architecture it's a part of my life in a way that is kind of all encompassing, in that you're in it, you're experiencing it, but it's also it's a conduit to the people that you work with and the relationships you develop. And I think that's probably the most important part of it for me right now is what it brings in terms of the people you get to interact with. They're all pretty great.
Yeah, it seems that collaboration is very important to you in your process of and being an architect. And what does collaboration look like for you, especially with the folks that are on the call, right? They're typically all your sub-consultants or your vendors, and what's the most important in that collaboration process?
Yeah, I think it's number one, knowing the different individuals and kind of what they do, and whether it's products that you use or whether it's talents that they have. You get to know people and and what they bring to the table. And what's most important is, knowing you have people to call on. We don't do this stuff in a bubble. Knowing that you have people that you can call on when you need them to say, hey, I got this project, or I got this situation, or you want them on your team because over the course of a project there's inevitably going to be challenges. So having those people that you can trust is very important. Rosie from Loxwell's in the call, and she knows I've known Rosie for a long time, and she and her team are people that I trust, and I know I can call them on a moment's notice, and which I've done recently, and it's about having that ability to have great teams that you can count on for whatever they are. I see Michael Tesler on here, and he's a great photographer, and the ability to know that there's people out there that have those various talents that you're bringing to the table for a project is important, because clients look to us to, with very specific goals, and we have to kind of look out into the quiver of resources that we have in terms of people. And so having folks like everybody that's on the line and throughout the larger design community here is important, because everybody brings something to the table, and it's important to have those resources available for our clients.
Yeah, definitely. How do you stay motivated in your work? Is there anything that sort of day to day, right, or the middle of the week that kind of you lean towards or are drawn to for inspiration?
I think a lot of my motivation just comes from momentum. I'm a big fan of momentum, and I think when you get momentum going in a good direction, it tends to stay going in that direction and keeps things moving. I love when that momentum gets started, and it generates energy in me to keep going. And the faster things move, the faster I want to go. So I stay motivated through making sure that people and processes keep moving. I like pushing things forward. I don't like stagnating in any way. So I think it's just movement is what keeps me motivated more than anything.
What would you say? Do you have a favorite building or structure that's kind of stands out that you love? Not necessarily one that you've done, but maybe something that inspired
one that
you,
I've done,
or that you haven't done.
The one that popped into my mind as it's kind of random, but it's not even there anymore. It was the first building that I did that I got to design and was demolished to make room for new things. And it was the expansion onto, at the time it was Monte Carlo, that involved Diablo's Cantina, if anybody remembers that. And it was an oddball in a lot of different ways, both in terms of what the goals were and where we were putting it. And I was pretty proud of that, because it was pretty small in terms of its footprint, but it was very visible, and we got to play a lot with the kind of the iconography of what that brand was, and create some things that were at the time pretty unique and monumental in its own right. But now it's gone and it's memory. But I also think that's part of the fun. But beyond that, like on the other end of that spectrum, you think of things like just buildings in general, and the experience that they create when you're in a city, and whether it's here in Las Vegas or in New York, or memories that I have in Rome, where it's not necessarily a building, but it's just all the buildings and all the buildings from various times, and what those things kind of create holistically around you is something that is kind of goes beyond just the individual structures. And it's something that I love to experience when I travel, is kind of what is that fabric and the influence of everything around you, not just an individual building.
Do you draw on that as you're designing new spaces, on history?
Absolutely. I always think it's interesting to, the work of having something that's existing or something that's very known, and creating something that goes along with it. And that idea of how are you, there's are you matching that? Are you complementing that? Are you contrasting that? And any one of those things could be a great option. We're doing some work on the East Coast right now, and I don't think I'm allowed to say the actual property, but it's a structure that is almost originally approaching 100 years old, and it's been added to a few different times, and we're looking at how to take it to into a new era that is contemporary, but also blends those things together, and you start looking at fabric, or the weave of textures on the buildings, and it's pretty cool to look at that and see how they blend together. And that's just on one building, but like I said, the context of what that means in with other buildings and scale, whether you're in an urban context or suburban context or something in between, it's definitely something that we look at all the time.
So you're obviously you run the Las Vegas office. Would you say your work is primarily here, or do you get to sort of, like you're saying, design for the other offices with JCJ?
JCJ, we have 7 offices across the country, and we are very cross-collaborative. So, we do a fair bit of work here. We do a fair bit of, we do quite a bit of work outside Las Vegas. So our Las Vegas office specifically, we have Las Vegas projects on the Strip, a few off the Strip. We also then collaborate with our Las Vegas clients on properties that they do across the country. In all those contexts, we always work, with folks across our offices. So, geographically, we have some advantage in that we have our offices spread East Coast, West Coast, and in the middle. So we can draw on the geographic proximities in a lot of ways, but it's more about the talent. We have some very talented people in all those offices. So we're able to kind of pick and choose, what's best for the project. And then, like I said, we have work on the East Coast right now that's close to some of our offices in New York and Connecticut, clients based in Las Vegas. So it works really well to have, people on both ends of the country working on those projects. So JCJ as a whole, I would say, the bulk of our project base is outside of Las Vegas as a company. And of course, historically, we've done a whole lot of work with Native American tribes across the country, which we're very proud of. And we pride ourselves on being kind of all over the place with everybody from everywhere, because it's about the bigger group and the teams we're putting together. So it's definitely more than just Las Vegas.
Great. And then I just wanted to let everyone know, if you guys, we're going to open it up for Q&A. So if you have questions, you feel free to put them in the chat. So I have that open, and then we can just kind of open it up as well in just a minute. I do want to say, Rick, he's got great comments. He said, awesome to learn that a gas station started it all. So great story, Mike. And he does love the Diablo's Cantina. It was a cool restaurant. I love the big terrace city that overlooked the Strip. So you guys, Rick is a fan, Rick Van Diepen. So
thanks, Rick.
So as an AIA community, do you think that there's anything else that, as the AIA and AEC industry could be doing more of, in your opinion?
I'm going to go back to something that I mentioned before, which is, anything to facilitate the interaction between our the individuals in the community. Coming out of COVID, and it's ironic. I'm talking to you all from my kitchen right now, because I'm here with my kids who are down with COVID right now. But we're coming off a period where it's been exceptionally hard to interact with people. And it's great that we can interact in ways like this. But, personally, the more we can get face to face with people and get to know one another, I think, like I said, talents of the individuals is so critical. We have some of the best people in our fields in this community. And the best way to foster that, I think, is to not only learn about what they do, but learn about how they are as a person, how to communicate with them. The people that there's people that you just really enjoy working with. And you mentioned Rick, and Rick and his work in the sustainability community here has been great. And he's one of those guys, like, he communicates very well, and he makes it easy to interact with. And I always appreciate people that are that way. And you get to know those people just through those interactions. So anything that can be done to bring the people together and foster that back and forth gets my vote as something that's worthwhile.
Do you have a preferred communication style?
I like to talk. I like being, I'm open and fluid. I just, I like having conversation. You never know where it's going to take you. And, I'm pretty laid back. I'm not a very formal communicator. I, try and mind my manners whenever I need to, but, I just like to shoot a fat with people, and you're always working towards a goal, and, in a place where you got to get stuff done. But, the more easygoing and informal and you can be, that's the way I like to operate, because you end up, kind of getting to the truth and getting people to think a little more fluidly when you have that approach.
Yeah, I would agree. Rick does have a question. So what are one or two good examples of cutting edge hospitality trends related to integrated resort design?
Gosh, I have an answer that I want to tell you, but I can't. I think in a big way, we're going to see some things in this city that are truly going to be game changers in terms of how we integrate experiences into our resorts. We have a level of scale in the city that is unlike anywhere else in the world, really. And we're able to bring, as a city, we're taking that next step to integrate more and more into our resorts. And, I'll take one in particular. We've all probably seen the headlines recently that F1 bought a chunk of land, I think Harmon and Koval. They're through that, they're making a pretty big commitment to Las Vegas, and you start to see how our footprint is getting a lot bigger. So I think the trends that we're going to see is a much bigger bet on large scale integration of different types of events. Sports is certainly one of them. We see it with Allegiant Stadium and T-Mobile and F1 and everything else that's being brought into the equation. But all that stuff works together. And I think what we're going to see is we went through those phases of gaming and retail and nightclubs, and all those things kind of expand and contract and find their place, and they all stay in a certain way. But I think we're going to see some larger scale approaches to how events are created. And that's going to occur in Las Vegas. That's going to occur outside of Las Vegas too. Miami is a great city to look at that and how they're approaching large events. But we live in a place where we get to set the stage for a lot of that and kind of set the bar pretty high. We had a very successful NFL draft here. We're creating resorts that have a lot of very functional assets or amenities that can be more than, Bellagio fountains are more than just something to look at now. They're actually a venue, and I think that's something that we're going to see across many integrated resorts is a nod to the ability to have bigger events and be part of a much bigger experience than just individual components within that property.
Great, thanks for sharing. He said it didn't have to be anything top secret, like with a little winky face. You're probably doing some cool stuff you can't talk about, right? So we'll get to see it when it's built. And we get to go. Yeah, of course. Kelly has a question. What is the mood with the owners for upcoming projects, given the economic outlook right now that does not look positive?
I think it could be summed up in 2 words, and that's hurry up. Our client, we're very fortunate. We have, Jason J's been, we came out of the pandemic, with a fire lit under us, and that really hasn't abated. I think, macroeconomically, there's a lot that's going to go on, whether you're talking about, consumer demand or interest rates or anything, all those factors. I don't see it putting a damper on anything anytime soon. It may, but right now our clients are very much in growth mode, and I think I'm hoping that whatever comes in the next 12 to 18 months in terms of an economic slowdown is obviously as brief as possible. But I think people are still thinking long term. So I don't think that's abated much in terms of their desire to move forward with anything and grow. But certainly it's their job to keep their eyes down the road and see what's coming. But we certainly haven't seen much in terms of hints at things slowing down in the very near future anyway.
Yeah, I think we could all probably agree that hurry up is across all platforms.
Yeah.
Want it yesterday. Mike, I had a question. You mentioned a couple of projects that you worked on which no longer exist. Las Vegas is constantly focused on staying on the cutting edge and is constantly redeveloping and redesigning itself. And you seem to be on the front lines of that. Can you speak to how you approach design, given that some projects may not be permanent? And do you feel more freedom to take risks or try new things? Great question.
Yeah, that's a good question. There's a couple things there. I on one hand, the city that we're in and the how we tear things down and build things up, it's pretty unique. That's not something that I think that's not something we think of. And while I joke a bit about Diablo's, being short-lived and already taken down, we're always thinking of that structure, being there for 100 years. And there's a lot that goes into that. We don't want to expend the resources, whether it's individual resources, human resources, or our physical resources and our energy resources for buildings that are going to be temporary. So we're always looking at it as something that's going to be permanent. I think the better way to look at that is how do we create something that's able to evolve, and change. And I think in the past, in you look at the properties here in Las Vegas, when the product was being developed in the 60s and 70s, there wasn't an idea of where things are going in terms of evolution of that, casino, hotel, resort product. But now we see that it's an evolving product and something that is part of a bigger whole, and above everything else needs to be dynamic. So we don't look at it as being torn down, but we do look at it as evolution. And I think that's a good way to do it because, like I said, we certainly want to be thinking long term because we know that we're in charge of, we're spending large amounts of money. We're using natural resources in a way that, needs to be done responsibly. So it's more about evolution than tearing down.
You just take risks regardless.
You got to take risks. That's what would life be if we're not taking some risks?
There you go.
You get one shot.
Did anyone else have any questions? Feel free to unmute if you do. Doesn't look like there's any in the chat box as of right now, but I want to be mindful of time. So any other questions before we end? Okay. Well, thank you, Mike. We appreciate the conversation and sharing your insight and perspective. So thank you so much for giving us your time this morning. And I also want to thank all the Allied members. We appreciate you. And then obviously your support for the AIA chapter. If you have any questions about your membership or anything Allied related, AIA related, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. And I hope everybody enjoys their week. Thank you.
All right. Thanks for having me. It's good talking to you.
Thanks, Mike. Bye.